Hi guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to do some arm controls, so let's jump in. Once again, in the same way I did with the legs, I'm going to create some circle NURBS curves. So let's grab that tool again, and we'll just create a circle on the grid. And what I want to do here is I'm going to have a few. I'm going to have 3 per arm. I'm going to have a wrist, an elbow, and a shoulder. So I'm going to start off by snapping this one onto the wrist, like this, and you can see there I've made it pretty big. Okay, then what I'm going to do is duplicate it and snap the duplicate onto the elbow, and then I'm going to duplicate it again and snap that one onto the shoulder. Now note that I'm doing this to the shoulder and not the collarbone. Okay, all right. I'm just going to turn off the geometry for the leg there. I don't have any body geometry for this, so you'll just have to basically work out sort of where your geometry is and just move these in appropriate positions. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is grab the shoulder and the arm controls, and I'm just going to use the rotate tool, hold down the J key, and I'm just going to rotate these 90 degrees. You can see that's rotating up there. Okay. Now the wrist control is pretty much going to stay where it is. Okay. The shoulder control is going to get moved, and the elbow control here is definitely going to get moved as well. With the elbow, I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees towards the back, and then I'll use the move tool and move that backwards, so that it's well behind the character like this. Okay. Now with this one, I'm going to scale this down because it's too big. So I'll just grab the scale tool and just kind of shrink that down. I want this generally to be about the same size as the knee controls, because they are essentially the same type of system. So they're going to be quite similar. Okay, so something like that should do fine. I could probably bring it a tad closer, something like this perhaps. Okay. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to duplicate the elbow with Control D, and obviously you can do that from here as well. Duplicate, and I'm going to punch in a minus value in front of the translate X. That's going to shift the duplicate across to the other arm. Okay, so this is pretty much the same setup as the knees. Okay, so I'm going to select both of those, and I'm going to delete the history and freeze the transformations. So we'll go Modify, Freeze Transformations. That's going to zero all the translates out. And then we'll go Edit, Delete by Type History. And that's going to get rid of any sort of construction history. Okay, then what I want to do is duplicate the shoulder control across to the right-hand shoulder. So I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to use point snap at the top here, and I'm just going to drag that across to that joint, and then we'll do the same thing with the wrist. So we'll duplicate it with Control D, and then we'll drag that across to the wrist joint just there. We'll turn snap to points off, and then we'll select those 4 controllers. We'll freeze the transformations, and then we'll delete the history. Now I'm going to point out at this point that there are several different methods for rigging, especially with these kind of controllers. And oftentimes you'll find in more complex rigs, they'll actually have these control handles inside groups, and they'll snap the groups to the joints rather than the handles directly. Okay. For the type of movement that we're going to probably have with our models, it's not going to matter too much. You know, as I've said before, a lot of people sort of do certain rigging techniques in different ways. So this is one way of doing it. It's not the only way. And if you're looking at getting more into rigging, I definitely recommend you go and research a lot more different types of rigs and different methods. And all of those are going to add to your skill sets. Okay. So this is not the only way to do your rigging. This is a pretty sort of basic stock standard type of rig. Okay, so we've got sort of all of our rigs in position, or at least all of our handles in position. I'm going to reposition these 2 here. So I'm going to select them, and I'm going to switch on my component mode like this. and then select the actual vertices in them like this. And let's just move them up like this. And I'm going to grab the scale tool. What I want to do is scale these down a little bit. So what I'm doing here is if I grab the control key and hold that down, and then I click on this X-axis handle, you can see I can shrink them without them actually squeezing together. If I just grab this handle by itself, it'll actually squash them together, which I don't want. So I just wanted to make those a bit smaller. And what I can do maybe is make them a bit wider. And then if I deselect, let's say these two vertices and use the move tool, I can kind of squish these down a little bit. So these are sort of my little shoulder controls. So they're a bit different a shape to the rest, so that I know that those are the shoulders rather than them being, say, the elbows or the wrists. Okay, but you'll notice when I select the object, the pivot points are still where the shoulders are. Okay, so let's connect this stuff up. The first thing I want to do is grab my pole vectors for my elbows. So I'm going to select my elbow joint, or elbow controller I should say, and shift select my IK for my arm, and we'll go to constrain pole vector like that, and that's going to give me that control there, the twist control. And you can see at the moment the hand is also twisting when I do this, and that's because currently the wrist control is not connected. I'll then do the same thing over here. So I'll grab my right elbow control, shift select the IK, go to constrain pole vector, and that's going to connect that one in. Just give it a bit of a wiggle to make sure that works. Don't forget I'm undoing to reposition these back to where they were. So after I test them, I let go and then hit undo, which is Z on the keyboard, and that's going to reset. Okay, shoulder is going to be the same as the hips, so that's going to be a point constraint onto the shoulder joint just here. So select your shoulder control, shift select your shoulder joint, and go to constrain point constraint like that. And you can see it locks out or overrides the position values for the joint. We'll do the same thing over here. Select the control, shift select the joint, and go to constrain point constraint. So now if I need to fine tune the positions of the shoulders, I can do that using this system. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to point constraint the IK handle to my wrist control. Okay, so I'm going to select the wrist control. I'm going to shift select the IK handle, and I'm going to go to constrain point like that. I'll then do the same thing over here. So we'll grab that handle, shift select the control, the IK control handle, and let's go constrain point. So what this is going to do is allow me to move the handle, and that's going to move the arm. Okay, currently I have no control over the wrist. All right, so rotating this at the moment doesn't do anything, but we're going to fix that now. All right, so now what I want to do is grab the wrist control, shift select the wrist joint just here, and I'm going to parent constrain that. So we'll go modify, constrain, parent constraint just here. I'm going to pop into the options. We make sure that maintain offset is switched on, and then we've got all the translates. Actually, we don't need to translate. I'm just going to use all the rotates, I think. Let's try that out. So I've just applied that. So when I move the IK handle, yeah, you can see how that's jumping off now. Okay, whoops, that's because I've got both selected still. Just going to grab the handle. So when I move the IK control handle here, the wrist control, that's going to move the IK, which moves the wrist joint. But because I'm not rotating the handle, the hand itself is staying aligned. Now if I grab the handle and I rotate it, that's going to allow me to rotate it around like this. Okay. So that's okay. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll grab the wrist control, shift select the wrist joint, and then apply this. And we should see the same thing there. So when I rotate this, the hand rotates, and when I move it, the arm moves. So that seems to be okay. So now what I want to do is add in my expression to control this joint. And what that's going to do is make this joint rotate at half the rate that this control handle rotates when I spin it like this. Okay, so when I do this with the character's hand, I want this to kind of rotate a little bit as well. So I've got a little expression here, which I'm going to punch in to the expression editor, which is just here. Now, this is going to require all of my control handles to be named. Okay, I also need to make sure my forearm joints are also named. Okay, now my wrist control, this circle here, has to be named the same as whatever I type in here. So I'm going to call this handle the left wrist control. So I'm just going to rename my handles. So up here, this is going to be left wrist control. We'll hit enter. This is going to be left elbow control. Now this is case sensitive as well. Okay, so if you put in a capital, you have to make sure that you keep it capital later on. This is going to be left shoulder control. And then it's the same thing on the other side. So this is going to be right. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So this one here is right shoulder control. This one's going to be right elbow control. Oops. And then this one's going to be right wrist control. Like this. Okay, so those have to be specific. So whatever you call these, doesn't matter what you call them, but when you punch in your expression, you have to make sure you spell this exactly the same as this. Okay, so likewise, my forearm joint has to be what I've got typed here. And I'm just going to click on the forearm joint, which is this one, this blue one. So you can see that I've got left forearm JNT. And then it's the same over here, right forearm JNT. Okay. I'm just going to save this file as for a second. So I'll just go save scene as. This one's going to be wrist and elbow. Wrist and elbow control. Okay. And what we're going to do is come up to modify, Windows. Let's go down to where have they put it in this version? So we're going to go animation editors, expression editor, just here, and that's going to pop this up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is type in a name, and this one's going to be called left underscore arm underscore twist, and I'll just hit enter. And then down here in the expression window, I'm going to type in this expression. Okay, now my objects are basically named exactly the same as this, so I'm just going to copy and paste this in, but what I'll do is run through it and explain to you what this is. Okay, so what I've got is the name of my left forearm joint, okay, and that's basically whatever I've got typed in here, so L forearm joint. Okay, now you can see when I selected that, it kind of did this, and basically I lost everything. Okay, but I haven't created that expression yet, so I'm just going to re-punch that in. Okay. So this is the left forearm joint, and it's the rotation X value, okay, for that joint. And that is going to equal whatever the left wrist control, which is this one, whatever the rotation X value of that is. All right. So the first section is the left joint forearm will rotate in the X-axis the same as the control handle. But then what it's going to do is divide it by half. So what that means is the joint will only rotate half of what the handle does. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit create. And what you should see right down the bottom of the screen is result and then left arm twist, which is what I typed here. Okay. Then what we do is the exact same thing, but for the other side. So all of the left values get changed to a right value. So what I'm going to do is hit clear, and I'm going to come back up to here and type in a capital R. Okay, just hit enter. Hang on, we might have to close this. So I'll just hit close, we'll open it up again. So window, animation editor, expression editor. Okay, so let's type in right underscore arm underscore twist. Just hit, let's make sure that that's an underscore like that. Okay, yeah, this panel's a bit of a pain. It's not that intuitive. If you change something, sometimes it kind of overwrites things. It's a bit weird. So it's basically saying that I've already typed it in, and that's because I changed the L just before. So what I'm going to do is change this slightly, just so you guys can see me punching it in for the other arm. So I'm just going to call this right arm twist. Doesn't really matter what you call them, it just pops up differently in the list. So I'm going to paste this in, and then what I'm going to do is just change these to right. So that's going to be right, and that's going to be right, and then we'll just hit create, and you can see there I've got right arm twist has been created. So now if I go down to my control here, right, you can see that that's the expression that I did just before. Okay, you can see right arm twist there. Now I might be able to fix that and set it up as left arm twist. There we go. And then this one here, left wrist control, that's fine. Okay, so what we should see now, when I rotate this in the X-axis, you can see this joint here changes. See how it's rotating about half the amount? So that's how that system works. What that's going to do is stop your character's arm geometry actually twisting into sort of like a zero volume, or kind of going like really, really thin. Okay, and over here on this one, we should be able to see the same thing occurring. So when I twist this one, you can see that the forearm on the right arm twists as well, which is fine. Now this one here, I'm going to just rename this. So you can see you can actually fix them up afterwards. This editor's a bit goofy, the way that it works. So so we've got the left arm twist, and then over here we've got the right arm twist. And that's how those systems work. Now once again, you know, we can, if you need to, you can parent the elbow controls to the wrist controls. If you feel the need, just to stop the elbows kind of flying out sort of forwards. So you can see that there, you can kind of bring all of that forward like that. And then you can grab the elbows and just kind of adjust them if you need to. Okay. So that's the arm controls. In the next video, what we're going to do is kind of attach all the body together and add some body controls in, and then a head control, and then a big master control. So we'll save that for the last video. So I'll see you then.